Hello, and welcome to The Fool and the Philosopher.
The Philosopher and The Fool. Yes, so tell me about this.
So Descartes.
Descartes, the dream man.
Yeah, well, I think I might have been wrong on his conclusion about dreams after reading his meditations. And it might have been Thomas Aquinas that actually had the idea that you have to be virtuous within dreams. Because Aquinas basically said...
Descartes a poo-poo head, follow me instead.
Well, he did say that, but he also...
Did he actually?
I mean, not word for word, but... So Aquinas was interesting because he's one of the fundamental, founders of modern Christianity, right?
Yeah.
But one of the main things he did was disprove proofs of God. So he's like, no, that proof is terrible. No, here's why. That proof is terrible. That's why. So he destroyed, everybody's proofs of God. And then he's like, here's 5 good ones. Boom, 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 boom. And
he's the original YouTuber, theist.
But it's fascinating that... Well, he's different from you two, though, because back in the day, everyone was arguing about proof of God existing, right?
Yeah.
But none of them didn't believe in God. It was just like, no, your proof sucks. God exists, but your proof sucks. Here's a better proof. No, your proof sucks. Here's a better... So it's a really fascinating form of argument. Imagine, the atheist or the anti-SJW or whatever arguments, no, SJWs are bad, but not bad because of that. The only person I could think of in modern age that did that was Christopher Hitchens, which was not exactly modern at this point. That was 20 years ago. But he had an argument against the death penalty where he actually, argued against most of the common arguments against the death penalty and then said, but the death penalty is actually bad because of this instead. And so it's a really interesting form of argument because you show, look, I've completely surrounded the position. I know it inside and out, and I'm still against it. Yeah. And it's I think that's a really cool way to argue, but it's very difficult to do. Yeah. And risky because I think Hitchens' final argument was actually bad. But because he said the government can ask you to risk yourself, but it can't command you to die. Which is his final argument, which sounds fancy, but I don't know if it's a great argument against the death penalty.
Well, here's the argument is that.
Yeah.
Is, in a proper just system, the government is the will of the people, and it's the people's will that you die for your crimes.
Yeah. But I think, his argument does have a bit of, do you want to give an institution, because all institutions tend towards corruption, do you want to give an institution the power of life and death? And it's no, but you can give them, you can say the will of the people is that we go to war, but they're not saying you have to die. They're just saying you have to fight, right? It's a different statement. And so I think even, you said in a perfect system, they are representing you, but it's not a perfect system.
Yes.
And so it's not a terrible argument. I prefer the argument that you're not really saving money and you could make a mistake. That's kind of my argument against the death penalty more. It's not that people don't deserve to die. It's that you could make a mistake and there's no coming back from that. So more of a Blackstone style.
Many who deserve to live died, and many who deserve death lived. Can you give that to them?
Yeah, exactly.
Gandalf.
Yeah. Gandalf had a great argument against it, basically. Yeah. It's can you give the life to those that deserve? If not, then don't take life needlessly. Yeah. No, I think that's it's very fancy.
Well, actually, even partly Gandalf's argument. Gandalf wasn't against the death penalty. He was saying, can you do it yourself?
Well, I think that is a bit of an argument against the death penalty because it's saying, look, unless you have absolute authority and knowledge, then...
Yeah, well, it's the original Christian argument of
he who's
vengeance
out
is mine.
Yeah, he who is out sin cast the first stone. That's actually, I was reading there's a theological debate between the interpretations of Jesus whipping the people in the temple. Yeah. Because there's some people that say, well, that means that Christians should be able to get violent and defend their faith. And other people saying, no, Jesus is allowed to.
Yes.
Because Jesus is God. Vengeance is his. He is the only person that is allowed to do that. So, anyways, going back to Aquinas and Descartes.
Sorry, it's just, Jesus also said, if you do not have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one.
Yeah, that's self-defense.
Yeah.
So, going back to Descartes and Aquinas. So, Aquinas said, basically, there are moments in dreams where you're not responsible for what happens because you're just an observer and you have not been considered to sin for that. But in the moment where you have a choice in your dream, then you are a sinner if you choose the... So I think it was actually Aquinas that more had that idea that I was thinking of. But Aquinas was Italian, and I heard there was a French philosopher. So Descartes is in line with that. So Descartes said, I don't know what his status was. He must have been a rich guy, I think, based on what he said.
Well, to be a philosopher, you're either rich, poor, or middle class.
There you go. So Descartes said, for just once in my life, I've put aside a bit of time.
It's just such a pointless statement, but it's true.
So Descartes said, so I'll just go over meditations, basically. So his 6 meditations. Not in order or specifically, just the broad idea. So he said, okay, so I've put aside a bit of time so that for once in my life, I may just sit down and think instead of, dealing with life and stuff. So he basically took a vacation to write a philosophical treatise.
Yeah.
And so he said,
So one day I'll take a holiday and I'll write my book. But he actually did it.
yeah. But he said, but also to think, because he said this is very hard to think about. So I'm only going to do it once. So I'm only going to think once in my life. But I'm going to do it now. Because the thought he was deciding to do was very difficult, which was, I am going to...
And after that, he never thought again.
Before I can set out and... Because he was a physicist, I think, by trade, right? So before I can prove anything, I have to know what I actually know. So I'm going to set out and see what I actually know. So there's a lot of historical context which goes into Descartes, and it's weird because... Hold that thought. So... I'm allergic to saving. All right. So there's a bit of history which goes into Descartes' ideas because he was so influential that nowadays we think more like he did than people thought in his time. So it's kind of like Lady Gaga, where she was a very rebellious counterculture singer because she did dance music and was like dancing and her music was like this electronic dance music that was subversive and
weird.
Yeah, it was weird and there was a huge spectacle to it. And now everyone does it.
Mm-hmm.
And so Lady Gaga actually changed the whole scene of pop music to the point where you're like, why does anyone like Lady Gaga? It's like just everyone does this. It's like what? But she was the one that did it. There's actually a trope for this on TV tropes, which is called Seinfeld is unfunny. Because like Seinfeld just does airplane jokes and like observational humor. It's like, how do people laugh at that? It's like the most basic form of humor. It's like, no, he invented it.
Yeah.
It's just he was so popular, everyone copied him. So Descartes was kind of like that with his way of thinking. But he said, essentially, I can't know anything. So how people used to think, how philosophy operated in Descartes' time, was you would pick a concept that you want to philosophize about, right? So you'd be like, okay, what is a man?
Yeah.
Okay, a man is a featherless biped. All right.
Behold a man!
What does it mean to be featherless? Well, it means that you would be a part of a species that isn't a fish or a bird or a lizard. Okay, what is a fish, bird, and lizard? And what does a part mean? And what is a species? And what? Yeah. So it's very Jordan Peterson. but you would basically, to learn something, you would just define it more and more precisely.
Yeah.
That was essentially how philosophy was done.
Mm-hmm.
And Descartes instead said, no, what if you do it in reverse and you get rid of things? So he said, okay, what do I know and I don't know? So first of all, the sun. How big is the sun? The sun is tiny. It's like this big. It's like a little pea. But our models show that the sun is actually massive. It's the biggest thing in the solar system by far. So my senses are in disagreement with each other, which means I can't trust my senses whatsoever. And I put my hand in some water and I think, oh, that water's hot. And it turns out the water's cold. Or I think the water's cold and it turns out hot, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so my senses I can't trust. So I don't know anything that my senses tell me. Okay, what about my memories? Do I know anything about my memories? It's like, well, a demon could have invented my memories. And also, like, actually before that, he said, I've remembered things wrong. I have thought I knew a fact when I didn't. I have forgotten a person's name. So I don't know my memories. I don't know my memories. Okay. So, okay, what are my thoughts? Just like my beliefs and my, like that squares exist, or like a triangle has three sides, like axiomatic beliefs. It's like, of course I can believe those exist, right? And it's like, well, no, because a demon could have taken me and deceived me and made me think. Because you think you know something, and you're like, oh yeah, no, a square has five sides, right? You're like, I definitely know a square has five sides. And then the next day you're like, I can't believe I said that. That was so stupid. Like, why did I say that? So that can happen to you. So you don't even know these axiomatic beliefs. In the moment, anything could be wrong, right? And you can't even know if you're dreaming or if you're awake. So he was saying, like, when you're asleep, you might think, oh, I'm awake and I'm doing things, but then you wake up and you realize, oh, that was just a dream all along. How can you actually know if you're awake or if you're dreaming? You could just be in a dream created by...
So they could conclude you can't know nothing?
So he said, okay, so I can't know anything about that. However, I am thinking right now, right? And I'm having these thoughts. So
I think, therefore I am. Is that him?
Well, yeah. But he said, so he said, I'm going to imagine I'm a being that I have no senses, I have no memories, I have no thoughts, because all of those can be deceived, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that something is deceiving me would suggest that there is something to be deceived.
Yeah.
So therefore, if I am aware that I'm thinking, even if my thoughts are wrong, I at least know that I exist, because there is something that is being deceived. The demon's not going to deceive nothing. Now, I don't think Descartes was... This is my first disagreement with Descartes. I think it's in it might be in my Sack Doctor book, you know, the one with like, oh, the window was open and the guy like reaches to the window and grabs the kid. I think there's actually like a god that just imagines people that have full lives that they think are real in its head, and then lets the imagination go away just to torture them, essentially. So like there is layers of horror beyond like conceptual existence that I don't think Descartes wandered into entirely. Like, but even you could argue even without God, for that moment at least you exist, even if you don't continue to exist. So Descartes wasn't a huge believer in rationalism and logic. Well, as a way of rationalism he was, but logic he wasn't. So he believed more that things were true if they were apparent, rather than you saying, well, A, therefore B, therefore C. He was just like, no, it's obviously correct. What are you doing? So he was he was a base guy for his time. He was like, no, it's just true. What are you talking about? So he doesn't do logical statements so much, but he does say, okay, so I know that I exist. Okay, so what else can now that I know that I exist, and that's the only thing I know right now, what can I derive from the fact I exist? Is there anything else I know that is true? And he said, now this argument's a little weird, and I'm not sure I've got it quite right, but he said, the fact that I exist means that there's something sustaining my existence, because time can be divided up arbitrarily. So let's say 5 seconds ago we split time in half, and now there's the time past that. He said, something being created is the exact same action as something existing. So if you chop up time into different arbitrary segments, things that do not have some power constantly creating them will vanish. So if we split time right now and then time restarts again, something that isn't continually creating itself or will stop existing. So existence isn't, you don't exist and then you're done. You have to continue existing, is essentially the argument. Mm-hmm. Which I think is a fine argument, but I think the way he goes about it is a little weird. But so something doesn't have ontological inertia, I guess would be maybe another way to look at it. But he says, so there must be something which upholds the existence of all things. Now, what is that thing? And he says, is that thing me? And he says, no, because I'm imperfect. And if I had created myself, I would have made myself perfect, more perfect, essentially. Which I think that's a mistake right there. Because maybe you can only create so much, even if you can create yourself and sustain your own existence. Maybe sustaining your existence is a very easy activity, and you don't have to, but creating a specific existence is very difficult, right? So I disagree with Descartes there. But he says, I think there's something outside of me that is sustaining me, and that thing is God. And so this I actually agree with. I think that you can say, axiomatically, things only exist because there is the thing called existence, which allows them to exist, right? Yeah. So the concept of existence allows things to exist. I'm okay with that. And I call that concept of existence God. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. The thing that causes all things to exist is God? That seems fair to me. Yeah, call that God. Where I think Descartes really, really goes off the rails is he then says that God... So this is where our previous conversation, I said, kind of combining Aquinas's, I guess now. You take Descartes' thought experiment, you only know that you exist, but everything you see, you still have to act with as if it's real, because that's the only way you can operate within that space, even if you don't know it's real. And so you take then you take Jordan Peterson's idea of, it's just a cloud of atoms unless you say, okay, this is a chair, this is a table, this is a desk, this is a microphone. Otherwise, you're just in a corner rocking back and forth, not achieving anything. And it might be real. Like, you could be wrong, and it might all be real.
Yeah.
And so then you say, well, that seems to apply to God, because it does seem like there is something called God, which is at the very least the highest purpose you move towards, and perhaps even that thing that upholds all existence. But where Descartes, I would wish we could have him on the podcast. Maybe we can get him at some point, because it's a really interesting conversation. He conflates the idea of the highest good that you move towards with the idea of the thing which upholds existence. And he says they're one and the same. And I don't think you can just do that on his presupposition that you don't know anything. Now, you can say, look, I'm a man of God, and God is clearly the creator of all existence, and he is all good. And that's fine. But Descartes' presupposition for the whole thought experiment is that I don't know anything, so what can I derive from not knowing anything, right? And so when he says, well, that there is this thing that you move towards, which is the ultimate good, and God is perfect, therefore So he says God is perfect in all things, which means that he is all good, and he is all-powerful, he is all-knowing, he is the source of existence itself. And so he also therefore exists. So his idea is that since God is perfect... Okay, this is another thing I need to explain about the past in Descartes' time. They had a belief.
Isn't that statement like ipso ipsum sum or something?
It's called an ontological fallacy. Yeah.
Am I right with that? Ipso ipso sum or something?
I don't think so.
Okay.
There's cognito ergo sum, which is what he said.
Yeah.
Which is I think therefore I am. That's what cognito ergo sum means.
Yeah, cognito ergo sum.
Yeah, but that's not the argument for God. This argument for God. So his argument for God.
It seems very self-fulfilling, and then just comes out of left field.
Yeah. Well, so to explain again the history of his time, things weren't good and evil, and hot and cold, and
yes and no, and up and down.
Those ones maybe not so much. But there was this idea, they weren't very dualistic in Europe in the 1600s. It was more of a spectrum.
Break up and make up.
It was more of a spectrum where things contained quantities of something.
Yeah.
So if something contained a lot of good, it was good.
Yeah.
If it didn't contain a lot of good, it was evil. So evil was actually absence. Evil wasn't a thing in of itself.
Okay. Evil was the absence of good.
Yeah. Cold is the absence of hot. Dark is the absence of light, but you can't have more dark and more cold. It's that you're missing some. Now,
no, I agree with cold being the absence of hot.
Yeah. So Descartes actually said, so he did, this was an exercise in humility, right?
Yeah.
So he did say, I don't actually know if cold is an absence of hot or hot is an absence of cold.
Yeah.
Because back then they didn't know about the vibrations of molecules or anything. So he wasn't sure. But he did say that he did know in his mind that evil was the absence of good rather than good being the absence of evil.
Yeah.
Because he said that nothing, from nothing can only come nothing, rather than from nothing can come something.
Yeah.
So therefore, God being something as a being of existence means that God contains qualities, and therefore, since God is good, God contains good and evil is the nothing state.
Yeah.
Essentially. Yeah.
No, I can see where he's coming from if that was his viewpoint of if they had the thought that evil was the absence of good.
Yeah.
And then that there has to be something that sustains reality.
Yeah.
Then the sustainer is a generator, so it is infinity.
Yeah, and if it's infinite, then it already contains everything.
Yeah, and it contains everything.
Then it's going to be, so God is going to be infinitely hot, infinitely good, infinitely just, and so one of the important things he said, which is similar to the Superman versus Goku debate, actually, is that God...
Sorry, what?
God...
Time traveler.
No, it's similar to that, because he said God cannot improve.
Yeah.
God is already the pinnacle of creation. Yeah. And so that's like Superman is basically the best already, right? Like that's sort of the same debate, I think. And whereas Goku is constantly improving, but it's like Goku is moving towards infinity, but he's never going to approach infinity, whereas Superman is already at infinity. That was sort of that debate. Now you could debate Superman in a lot of incarnations isn't actually that strong.
No.
Thomas Aquinas was more, he thought more Goku would actually stand a chance, whereas Descartes...
Well, so if we average Superman across all his strength, I think his average is lower than Goku, where Goku's currently at.
Yeah, but Goku has one...
incarnation, one story, one life.
Whereas Superman has thousands.
Well, actually, you could argue that Goku has two, given that when the animation split from the manga...
Yeah.
And because he basically stopped writing the manga for a bit when he got fed up with it, but they decided to keep animating it. And so there's a whole bunch of uncanon Goku stuff.
Right. But there's like two incarnations of Goku, but there's like thousands of Superman. So it's a very hard comparison to make, I think.
Yeah.
So he believes since God is that thing with infinite existence, therefore he has infinite good, infinite, because he is the source of all things, right?
Yeah.
And so then he said, okay, so therefore God exists. Now, if God exists... he must be infinitely good. And if he's infinitely good, that means he would not deceive me, which means I can actually trust everything I see. I can trust my senses, I can trust my thoughts, I can trust... And he said, okay, but wait a minute, because I just said, I'll see a flame in the distance and I'll think, oh, there's a little candle over there, and then I'll walk over, there's a bonfire, or like the sun is tiny or whatever. So he said, so what's going on there? And he said, okay, well, the reason for that discrepancy is that I have infinite willpower. I can always make a choice. So I have this equivalent willpower to God. And he has this whole section on, like, I'm not being arrogant by saying I have infinite willpower to God because willpower is non-divisible. I can't imagine having 90% willpower. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
That's not a statement that makes any sense at all. So therefore I have an infinite willpower, so my willpower is equivalent to God. However, I am limited in my understanding. So if I use my willpower, which is infinite, to come to conclusions that my understanding cannot support, I will be deceived. So the deception is my own fault. So you can't say, let's say, these headphones have a green band.
Yeah.
You can say, I see a green band on these headphones, because then you're saying, my senses show me this, but that doesn't mean it's true.
So under Descartes' logic, the devil is his own fault?
The devil is you using your infinite... yeah, it would be your own fault, essentially. It would be saying you know more than you actually know.
Yeah.
So the problem is...
So under Descartes, the evil is arrogance.
Yeah, you have to operate...
Or actually, no, it's even... No, it's arrogance, not hubris, it's arrogance.
You have to operate very carefully to not exceed your understanding.
Yeah.
So he said, so what can you actually understand then? So therefore we know we're not deceived, but our willpower exceeds our understanding. So he said, okay, so you...
So I'm just imagining, you know the poem of the Adam draws the first picture and then the devil says art. But imagine Descartes is humanity doing art, and the devil whispering at him is Nietzsche. Like, Nietzsche from the bushes.
Actually, so...
And then it's like Nietzsche crawling from his chimney and whispering to him.
I should actually do Descartes' proof of that the willpower is higher than the knowledge as well, right? So he said your willpower is infinite because you can't imagine double willpower or half willpower. Like, that doesn't make sense. You get to choose or you don't get to choose. You get to make decisions or you don't. However, and that choice is made maybe not in your body. He said the body and the mind are separate, which was an unusual idea for the time.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because he also said the mind does not pilot the body. They are inseparable, but they are two separate things. They are two separate, inseparable things. Because he said if your mind piloted your body, then you'd be like a captain of a ship where you would notice, okay, there's hull damage, right? Oh, I got hull damage in the ship. All right, got to check that out. But instead, you feel pain.
Yeah.
You don't go, oh, something's broken. You actually feel pain, and that pain is something that is negative beyond all else, right? So
clearly he had a lot of showers during his time of his meditation.
Oh, it's just as a like it's super rambling. He's like, wait, 3 days ago I said this, so let me now think about that. Like
this just sounds like pure shower thoughts.
It is. It's really neat though. Like I said,
so a massive amount of our modern philosophy is based on one guy just standing in the shower for a week.
Not exactly, because Aquinas sort of tore him apart,
and then Nietzsche tore.
No, and then Kant tore him fully apart. Like Aquinas, people said there were still some arguments that you could defend Descartes with, and then Kant just annihilated
Aquinas.
Descartes.
Descartes?
Descartes, yeah, directly to the source. Because he said, you're assuming that existence is a perfect attribute. And so it's like, oh, so God could be perfect but not exist. So that's an assumption right there. So there's a lot of ways you can argue against Descartes, but Kant just cut right to the source.
And then Nietzsche destroyed Kant.
Yeah, well, in a different way, but yeah.
So we need a guy to totally wreck Nietzsche.
Well, I think Jung kind of has, and Jordan Peterson actually in a way.
We need like Rex Nietzsche YouTube compilation.
Oh!
Completely destroys him, I think what it was in the 2016.
Destroyed with facts and logic. If you find something meaningful, it is meaningful. Oh! Nietzsche's like, no!
That was Jung, right?
Yeah, it was more.
The problem is I don't think people know Jung as well as they know Nietzsche.
It's just...
Because Nietzsche had some bangers.
Yeah. But, so going back to his proof that understanding is limited, whereas willpower is infinite. So he said, when I was a kid, I thought that the sun was this tiny little thing. When I did the math, I realized the sun is gigantic. I don't actually know how they did the math in the 1600s. I guess they had...
They looked at the shadows move, I think.
I guess they had telescopes and stuff, too.
Yeah, and I think they also looked at shadows.
Yeah. So he said...
Like, using shadows, I think, is how you can figure out how far away it is.
There was, like, an ancient Greek dude back in the day where they figured out I think it was the circumference of the Earth based on...
Pillars.
Yeah, they're like, how tall is this pillar on this place, and then this other place that's 100 kilometers away.
Yeah, they figured out the curve and circumference of the Earth.
Yeah.
And then I think using that math, I think we learned this in physics, that if you can use that math of the circumference of the Earth and shadows, I think, to figure out how far the sun is away from Earth, and then figuring out the distance, I think is how you can figure out how big it is.
Yeah, I think Descartes was before Newton, so he wouldn't have had the same understanding
Well, I think
of
the Greeks
gravity.
did this.
Right.
You don't need gravity.
Oh, okay.
You can purely do it by distance and size.
Okay. Oh, because if it's that far away but it looks that small, then it must have to be that big for something.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's literally, if it looks that big, and they were off. Like, they didn't have the numbers perfect, but it's basically, okay, so it looks that big, it moves the shadows this much.
Right. So you just need, like, trigonometry, I guess.
Yeah.
Something. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of triangles.
So it was probably, what's his face? Mr. Don't Touch My Circles that figured it out. I bet he could have done it.
Yeah.
Archimedes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so he said, so when I was young, I didn't know how big the sun was. Now I know a better idea of how big the sun is. Therefore, my understanding increases over time. And my understanding could, God willing, become infinite. Like, it can move towards infinity. But God can't learn anything.
Yeah.
Because God already has infinite understanding. Which means that my understanding is not infinite, otherwise I would never learn. But I am learning. So my understanding is limited, but my knowledge is... my willpower is infinite. Or not willpower, but will itself. Not will. My will is infinite, but my understanding is limited. Therefore, that's how we are led astray. What's the next thing here that was interesting? There was a few. Where are we going with this? So, the things he can know, right? That's what we're talking about here?
Yeah.
So, that's how you are led astray. And
that's how we know God exists and God's infinitely good, and then that's how you know you exist because God made you. But it's
right. So God wouldn't deceive you. Yeah. So we got that, and then
I feel like Nietzsche's whisper is, well, if it's for your own good that you're deceived.
So he talks about that actually.
Okay.
Yeah, and he says that because God is at the maximum of everything, and because deception is the lack of virtue and honesty, it's impossible for God to deceive.
But God can do anything. He's infinite.
Right, but remember what we said before, what freedom is.
Yeah.
Freedom is the ability to do the right thing at the right time.
Yeah.
So God's ability to do anything. You actually can do more if you're unable to do the wrong thing, in a sense, because then you can choose the right action. And God always chooses the right action at the right time. Yeah. So therefore, God is actually incapable of deception. Because deception is a lack, and God has no lack.
Interesting.
So it's like God is incapable of weakness, right? That's the same idea. So therefore, God cannot deceive you.
I have the argument for where God is being all-powerful and all-knowing comes from. Because you're asking me the other day.
Descartes.
Yes, Descartes.
Well, it was that philosophy at the time, I think, was that if something is good, then it is... But I don't know if Descartes exactly explains, like, the jump there, right? Like, okay, so the thing that upholds existence exists. We call that God. So God exists. And since God is all good... Wait. Why is God all good and all powerful and all... Well, because God is the most of everything. It's like, why is God the most of everything? Why isn't God a limited being?
God is the most of everything under Descartes' system from second-hand talking because God is reality.
So he is the contingents of him upholding existence. Oh, right. Oh, so this is another philosophy, right? This was another thing, historical thing. You're correct, but you didn't actually know the history of it. So...
well, I feel like, when you play a video game and you like skip a step and you get past what the game makers intended, you're just better than them.
Yeah. So Descartes believed, for some reason, it does make a certain degree of sense, but I don't think you can just state it axiomatically and say that you know it. But he said that a thing cannot contain something greater than itself. And so the thing that creates existence must be greater than all of existence.
Well, a cup cannot contain more water than itself.
Yeah, so it makes a sort of intuitive sense, right? Yeah. But he said basically a human mind cannot conceive of God. We can only, like, meditate on... Descartes believed heaven was meditating on the nature of God. So just thinking about the glory of a being that was infinite in every way was heaven. And so he said the great thing about us is that we can actually do that on Earth. We don't have to go to heaven to do that.
Must have been right fun at parties.
Well, if you think about it, though, he does have a point in that... Because I've always thought, like, heaven would eventually get boring, right? But since God is infinite and you can always improve towards infinity, heaven would never get boring, actually. You could always... And if you... What is meditating on the infinite nature of God? That could be like a philosophical discussion going to church like this podcast, right? That could actually be the same thing as meditating on the infinite nature of God.
All right, but why would heaven be boring?
Because...
So here's the thing, right? When people say, oh, if you go to hell, right?
Yeah.
Then eventually you get used to the pain.
Yeah.
No, it's hell.
Yeah.
Part of it is you don't get used to the pain. That's how it's internal punishment. Part of the rules of hell is you don't get used to it.
And so part of the rules of heaven could be you don't get bored. Or something. Yeah.
It's heaven.
Okay, I'll do the tangent later, but I'm trying to learn to not tangent so much. Okay.
No, there is no tangent.
No, I was going to do another tangent,
okay.
but I'm not going to. I'm going to restrain myself.
Yeah, my thing on heaven and hell though.
Yeah, I'm going to that was on track. It's just I was going to do something.
Yeah.
But I'll keep that with my coffer within.
Yeah.
Since days let it go on that. Oh no. Okay. So, there was also, I think it was a proof of the goodness of God, possibly. It's somewhat unrelated because again he was actually rambling, like is literally shower thoughts. But he talked about this idea that if you get hurt, I think this was actually part of his proof that a thing cannot contain something greater than itself, but I don't know if I understood it enough to go on it. But he said, okay, let's say your hand is like in a fire, and you get hurt, right?
Yeah.
So a signal, they believed back then that nerves were like a lever and pulley system.
Yeah.
So...
Sorry, I just came up with the argument against a thing cannot hold something greater than itself, but go on.
Okay. So they believe like nerves are like this lever and pulley system, essentially. So you get hurt, that yanks on the nerves on your finger, which yanks on the nerves on your arm, which yanks on the nerves of your shoulder, which yanks on a special part of your brain. But the interesting thing is, it doesn't yank on a part of your brain that tells you your hand is on fire. It doesn't yank on a part of your brain that says, look at your hand. It doesn't yank on a part of your brain that says, ow, 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 ow. It actually yanks on a part of your brain that makes you take the exact correct action to stop the pain from happening, which is yank your hand out of the fire.
Yeah.
Of all the infinite choices that your nervous system could do, it actually acts autonomously to correct the situation, which is a really interesting proof of God's goodness, I think.
Yeah. So, was he ever married?
I don't know.
And did he... Okay, because the argument against the containing something greater than itself is pregnancy.
Like a woman could contain a child and create something that was greater than her.
Yeah,
no, that is really good, actually, yeah. Yeah, so I think that kind of defeats his idea a little bit there. But he does have some ideas like...
Get wrecked! Only...
400 years.
400 years!
Which is why I'd love to have him on the podcast. Because I was thinking about this, right? You know how you have these great ideas and then I shoot them down all the time on the podcast? And I think I do a quite good job of shooting them down, too. Like, I'm not just denying you. I think I'm actually tearing apart your logic and leaving it in shreds. And, like,
Or you just ignore it and make stupid jokes.
Yeah. But I was thinking, like, if I was Descartes' older brother, I think he would have been a more correct person, because I think I could have defeated his arguments. Now, that is with the thoughts we have today, right? Like, back in the day, the knowledge foundation might not have been there to have the thoughts I'm having to defeat his arguments. But
the space whale hand is a different shape at that time and place.
Yeah, he actually didn't believe in the space whale. He conceptualizes it quite well. I can't remember the exact part right now, but he actually says, like, no, ideas are not... Oh, right. He basically says ideas are not a thing separate from the mind. They are within the mind, exactly. And you can't have ideas exist without a mind. Whereas my space whale new sphere idea would require the ideas to exist separate from minds.
Yeah, it says, even Jordan Peterson says, people don't have ideas have people.
Yeah. So Descartes was very much... a mind can exist without ideas, but an idea can't exist without minds.
Yeah.
So he didn't believe in the space whales. But I think, like, I would have, if I had the ideas I had now, which maybe I wouldn't back in the day, I would have been able to completely undermine most of his arguments.
Yeah, you would have been able to bully him.
Well, no, I think I would have, like, convinced him that he was wrong. And then he would have never published his works. And then he wouldn't be one of the foundational figures of the Western world. And I had this moment of, wait, am I the bad? Like, but it's tricky because he was wrong, right? So he was foundational, but it's like,
Or are you saying you should leave me alone so I can become a great thinker of this age?
Yeah, but you could be like a Nick Fuentes, right? Like, I'm not saying you would be Nick Fuentes specifically, but Nick Fuentes is wrong, right? But he is a very influential person.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you would have a much weaker foundation, which people could attack. Whereas there's very few people like Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson came onto the stage, he was attacked from all angles, and he was unassailable.
Yeah.
I think after his...
first near-death experience.
Yeah, I think he became more saleable.
Yeah.
He became assailable. And then his second one...
it's ongoing.
It sounds like he's doing better. It's not, like, guaranteed, but he's been getting better. And it might have been caused by mold poisoning again, which is, like...
Well, actually, I have a mixed theory. It's possibly caused by mold poisoning again. I think it's actually, in Avatar? Yeah. Where Zuko, like, becomes super sick?
Yeah.
After he betrays Aang?
Yeah. Well, Michaela actually talked about that. I don't know if you saw her post, but she said, our best theory is that after his dad died, he went into his house, into his basement, which is full of mold. He got a bunch of stuff out of there, and he rapidly started getting sick after that.
Yeah.
It's either that or a spiritual attack. Like, that's the best we have no clue, basically. But that's our best,
Yeah. Well, my thoughts is that the Daily Wire influence on him of him taking the money from the Daily Wire and having to walk certain lines because he wants to keep getting that money.
Yeah.
Basically, his moral spirit started screaming about that, and it attacked him.
Yeah, or it could be, like, a bit more charitable to him, but similar idea is just, like I said before, he was unassailable because he had that super rock-solid foundation. He could have become famous when he was 25 with his brain, but he instead built that foundation.
Yeah.
And then when he was 50, he became famous, and he was unassailable until later. But it could be that, like you said, if it's a spiritual attack, it could be actually him rebuilding that foundation to catch up to where he is now.
Yeah.
To the point where once... I really hope he does get better. And I hope when he comes out of it, he'll be untouchable. Like, he will be he'll become Gandalf the White.
He was
Peterson the Grey.
Jordan Peterson the Grey. He'll be Jordan Peterson the
White. And I really hope, something along that line does happen. That would be nice.
And he'll stop wearing his Two-Face suits.
That was like, it was like a Russian guy, right? The suit maker.
Yeah.
And like, it was this very kind gesture. Like, I'm going to give you 12 suits for free. But I also wonder if he was like this Russian subversive spy agent to make him look insane. Because the suits look so crazy. And now I'm not...
They're gorgeous, and it's creative, and it's fun, but...
Well, that's the thing. The problem is, Jordan Peterson is a left-wing person. He is a creative mind who has a high openness to experience and likes goofing around and playing around.
Yeah.
And his audience is a conservative right-wing audience.
Yes.
And so he looks like this deranged person because his critics look at him as a right-wing person. And a right-wing person wearing a goofy suit is an insane person.
Yeah.
So it's...
it's like being one of the drag queens.
Yeah, whereas if he was a left-winger with the crazy suits, it's like, oh, it's funny Jordan Peterson. Yeah. And then the right-wing would be like, well, yeah, that's what you expect from the left, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to think of Kyle Kalinske at one point, I think, was a left-winger who would wear suits and, like, be very professional and say, but now he's got his hair dyed, like, white and, like, he's got so he doesn't even do it anymore. Cenk Uygur, I guess he's very... Like, he's a very conservative businessman who's a very left-wing show. So I guess he's probably the closest example I can think of. Maybe Hassan Piker as well. Well, did you see that article? It was like the mega body with the left-wing brain or something. Which is...
No, it's a tiny Turkish head on a fridge. Is what he is.
No, I think it is one of the most commendable things about him is he does look after his fitness. Like, that is... He is a very big, strong guy. Like, that is commendable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, but it is a tiny head on a fridge.
Yeah. And you do see, like, he does put the work in. Like, it's... I mean, you have to. You can't get a body. Yeah. Even if you take steroids, you have to put the work in.
You have to put some work in.
Yeah. And so... and I don't think he is doing steroids. Like, he doesn't look like a steroid sort of body, really. But,
no, it doesn't look like roids.
Yeah, so I do think he is putting the work in, which is commendable from him.
I know what roid flesh looks like.
Which is one thing of many. So going back to our good friend Descartes, let's see. God exists because he is infinite and therefore infinite thing good. Right. Axioms. So Descartes comes up with this idea. This is the complicated one.
He has 5 axioms. How many have we gone through?
He doesn't have 5. He has 6 meditations.
Okay. How many have we gone through?
I don't know. They kind of bounce back and forth. Yeah. But he...
Quick, break down. Give me the 6...
The idea...
pillars.
The next thing he says is, okay, so we have infinite will.
Yeah.
We have limited understanding. How can we know if our understanding is sufficient to engage our judgment? Right, so that's the next question. Because he hasn't actually proven anything in a way, right? He's like, I exist, God exists, and God doesn't deceive us, but we can deceive ourselves. So we're kind of back to square one. It's like, wait, so we can deceive ourselves, so how do we know if something's true, right?
Yeah.
Like, because we can deceive ourselves. So he comes up with this system, which... Now, I think I got the authentic Descartes experience, because I was reading a very unusual translation of Descartes, which means this guy could have been totally lying about what Descartes said.
Yeah.
Because he does some very weird... Like, he adds in words for Descartes, he splits up the sentences... Like, he says it at the start, like, I have deleted sections that I thought were not useful, and I've added words in and whatnot. But I think it's the authentic Descartes experience, because how am I supposed to know if I'm reading the authentic Descartes or not? So I think, like, you have that layer of interpretation which gives you room for doubt, which is exactly what Descartes' entire philosophy was based around, right? So I do think it was the authentic experience.
Yeah.
So the idea is called clear and distinct in almost every translation.
Yeah.
And so it's Descartes' method of determining if something was real. But in this translation I read, he actually translated it as vivid and clear. Mm-hmm. And I think the vivid and clear, he does explain his reasoning for translating it differently. And I do think his reasoning is actually better. I think his translation is slightly better, although I still don't think either is perfect with the idea. But the rough idea, and this is the part I had the hardest time with, because the problem with reading Descartes for me was very early on, he introduces the idea that, well, God obviously exists. And then everything else is built upon that idea.
Yeah.
And I disagreed with that initial... Not that I disagree that God exists. Like, I would say I'm very agnostic on that. But it's actually under his framing, I don't think he proved that you can know that God exists. And so, therefore, the rest of your entire argument doesn't follow. And so it's very hard for me to follow your argument because the foundation is weak.
Well, obviously God does exist, and you don't need proof of that.
But
it's in everything.
But Descartes wanted to try, right?
Yeah.
He wanted to, like, what if we're in a hell created by demons and there is no God and they're just deceiving the idea that God exists, right? Like that could be a possibility.
Yeah, but God won't let that happen.
Well, but we don't know that God exists until we learn that, okay, God does exist, and he wouldn't let that happen. That's kind of Descartes' rationale, right? But I think that a sufficiently powerful demon could also make you believe in axioms, even if the axioms weren't true. So I don't think he quite got over that, but he thinks he got over that. So with the foundation being weak there, for me, I find the vivid and clear distinction difficult to understand, but my best interpretation of it would be... Oh, this is the other important thing, though. I said the argument doesn't quite follow, right?
Yeah.
But remember again, Descartes wasn't a fan of formal logic.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to follow exactly.
This is a very stupid idea.
Well, go on.
Okay. So life's a simulation, right?
Yeah.
Or it's a video game.
Yeah.
And at the start, there weren't a lot of players, right?
Yeah.
And at the start of a Twitch streamer's career,
yeah.
They don't have a lot of viewers, and so they listen to their commenters, and like their commenters are there and they say them.
Yeah.
So commenters are demons and angels.
Yeah.
There's a lot more players now and a lot more viewers.
Right.
And so it's getting all muddled.
Right, because when the comments just fly by, you don't even pay attention to them. They're just like noise.
Yeah.
Right. That was actually something Descartes talked about, which it annoys me he said it because it seems to be what he's doing. He didn't talk quite about that, but he said that, but it does seem like he's applicable to everything, which is impressive, given how basic his ideas are. But he said, I have a lot of questions for which you can speculate answers. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, you could speculate, for example, this idea of the Twitch stream with the demons and the devils and everything.
Yeah.
But I don't know that that's true. And so I'm only going to, for the purpose of this thought exercise, do what I know is true, not what I can speculate about. What are you doing? Oh, cool.
I forgot I had this drawer of mechanical Lego creations.
That's kind of clever. It's like an automatic Lego axe made from a wheel. That's kind of clever. All right. So Descartes said, look, there's a lot of very plausible, what do you call those? Imaginations, basically, that you could come up with for plausible explanations for things. But we're not allowed to use any of them for the purpose of just once in my life. We're not allowed to use any of them.
Yeah.
Right. We can only do what we know from first principles. But then he introduces God, and I really feel like that was cheating. And people in his day also thought that. They're like, hey, and he got a ton of letters, and he replied to a lot of those letters. I haven't read those letters back and forth, but he did think, like, there was a lot of people that were like, wait a minute, you can't just throw in God.
Yeah, and I did feel a little left field.
Yeah. So, and apparently,
which I'm apparently hearing from a third source now,
so,
because even the author you had wasn't the best translation.
Well, it might have been the best translation. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
But given
it's
that...
a very Descartesian experience.
When I was reading about, on Stanford Ed, on essays on Descartes, and reading the history about Descartes, and it seems to can be conveying the exact same ideas, that suggests to me that he was translating it correctly, given that I got the same understanding that I was reading about. So that's the best I can do there. So the basic bad ontological fallacy is, all right, God is perfect in all things, right? So God can be really good. He's all powerful. He's all kind. He's all loving. He's all knowing. And so if God is perfect, then God would be even more perfect if... Right. That's why God has to be all good, I think. Yeah. Okay, but so God would be even more perfect if he existed, right? Because if God doesn't exist, then he's not perfect. But if God is even more perfect, he exists. So I think it was Aquinas, actually, that might have come up with the argument. He's like, imagine an island, like, the beach is super nice, it's beautiful weather, you love it. And it's like, well, that island must exist, right? Because it's the perfect island, so it must exist because it's perfect. And it's like, that doesn't follow. So your argument for God sucks, too. Yeah. I think it was Aquinas that came up with that counter-argument. Yeah. It might have been someone else.
There's a woman there that loves you.
Yeah.
She doesn't exist.
But I think Kant's argument is even better, actually, which is, why is existence a perfect quality?
Yeah.
Which I think is actually an even better argument.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, given that... So, Descartes' idea, given that a thing cannot contain a greater thing than itself...
Yeah.
It means that even if you can think of an imperfect God that's very powerful, or even all-powerful, but not all-knowing, that means that God must have had its form of existence from something else, which is even greater. Yeah. And so eventually when you go up the scale, there will be the real true God, who is all-powerful and all-knowing. And then he also says that, I think he has a proof saying...
Oh, so then, if demons are what gives you... No, but you gave yourself delusions. Never mind.
So even if there... And he also argues that there can't be tears of God for some reason. I don't remember what it was, but... I think he said the source of existence can only be one single thing or something like that.
Theorizing the Big Bang.
Yeah, so his idea... Well, that was Aquinas, actually. So Aquinas, one of his 5 arguments was for the existence of God, was that, all right, your parents gave birth to you, right?
Yeah.
Your grandparents gave birth to them. And so on and so on and so on, until... I don't think they had, evolution back then, but he was basically like, everything was created by something. Right? Going back and back. A rock was created by a mountain. Mountains were created by volcanoes. You go back and back and back. At some point, everything was created by something else. That singular point that everything collapses down to, that's God.
Yes.
So that's one of his 5 arguments. I haven't.
That thing said, "Let there be light."
Well, he said, "I am that I am."
Well, he later said,
"Yeah." So Aquinas had 5 arguments for the existence of God, and that's one of them, as I understand it. I haven't read much Aquinas, but that's one of them.
Well, he said logos. It shall be on the side of a shoe in a check mark. And Didos.
So Descartes said that you could know something is true if it is vivid and it is clear. Because God does not deceive us, if we see something clearly, we know it's vivid and true. So I think the example I would use in my own life would be, when I'm asleep, I don't know if I'm awake or I'm asleep. When I'm awake, I know I'm awake.
Yeah.
Right. And since God's not a deceiver, you can then trust that sense that you know that you're awake. Mm-hmm. And so he said, something is, I'll use the original term.
Thus in dreams, devils tread.
So for anyone that's listening that is a scholar of Descartes, keep in mind the translation I'm using uses clear in the opposite meaning of the original translation. So, but I'll be doing the vivid and clear verse instead of the clear and distinct. So something is vivid if it is a distinct attribute of something. So, color is a vivid thing you can sense. So, this is blue. Except you can't say this is blue. You can say, I see this.
It's white, actually.
So you can say, I see this as blue. So the vivid thing is color, right? Yeah. The vivid thing is an attribute of a thing. So you say, I heard a sound. Whether or not there was a sound, doesn't matter. You heard a sound. That's the vivid aspect of it. Something is clear when it exists independent of all other things.
I had an existential crisis when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Which is, what the world I saw wasn't the world that other people saw.
Yeah. So Descartes talks about that, yeah.
I see the world the way I see it, and then you say the world the way you say it, and I say purple, and you say exquisite.
Yeah.
But I'm saying exquisite in your world, and you're saying purple in my world.
Yeah.
And that gave me an existential crisis. Now I realize that doesn't matter.
Well, Descartes talked about that, where he said because you can have 2 different interpretations of the same thing, including, you look at the sun, you think it's bigger, I think it's smaller. That means that you can't actually know that, right?
Well, no, my statement is it is the same thing, because from each of our own observation it is the same thing. So therefore it doesn't matter.
Right. But then arguments tend to arise when people actually have a slight discrepancy and they don't realize it, right? Yeah. That's where a lot of, word definitions
come in. I'm talking about in this twisted reality of fractured realities amongst many other people.
Yeah. So let's go back to the blue cup, right?
Yeah. Kind of purple.
So if the cup didn't exist, would it still be blue? And Descartes didn't believe in the idea of like Platonic concepts existing. So he would have said no. The cup, if the cup doesn't exist, it's not blue. It has to exist to be blue.
Yeah.
So therefore, it is not clear, or in the original terms, it's not distinct.
Yeah.
So it's like, so it's clearly you can see it's blue. So it has a color to it. That's an aspect. But if you remove another aspect of it, that vanishes. And so a thing is only distinct if it is true, even if you remove all else. So like it is a sense unto itself, essentially. And not just a sense, but like a thing into it. He actually defines thing, which includes senses, but also includes ideas and thoughts and understandings and everything like that. So he then says, okay, so which things can I say are clear and distinct? Which things exist, but also if everything else was removed, they would still exist. And he said, well, the first thing I can prove is clear and distinct, and therefore I know is true, is God. Because if you removed all else, the existence could still exist. So therefore, God is clear and distinct. And so I now see clearly the reason I knew that God was the creation of all things is because I can so clearly understand that he is. Because God would not deceive you.
Okay.
And so, what?
I'm just going to ask you to start concluding.
Okay. You're running out of energy?
Yes, for the last hour.
Okay. All right. So,
I've been barely holding on.
how do I conclude this then?
I had a small second wind, but it ran out.
Some of the other things, I guess, that he finds clear and distinct.
Summarize Descartes. What did you get out of this?
Mostly that he was wrong.
Okay.
Yeah. But a lot of his ideas are stuff that I've noticed that a lot of people aren't actually thinking about, because when they talk, they don't at least take into account everything he's saying. Because I think even though he's wrong, you need to take into account the things he's saying and at that point reject them, but not before.
Do you think that's true of a lot of people, like Jung and Nietzsche and these great thinkers?
Like that you have to, if you had read them, then you could have a much more clear understanding.
But they exist everywhere, irregardless, because that's the way that civilization of the West is now?
I think that Descartes is more important because his ideas are more foundational, which is, can we even agree that things exist? Like, I saw an argument last night, it was between a bunch of lawyers, talking about the idea, in the Constitution of the United States, we hold these truths to be self-evident. And one of the lawyers, who is a common sense Scottish realist, I think the philosophy is called, which is essentially very similar to Descartes.
Yeah.
It's like, look, in Descartes, this is a really, so Descartes said, when you feel hungry, you feel a feeling, and then you know to go eat something. But the feeling isn't the feeling of, I need to eat something. So you can just know things based on your senses, right? And in the same way, you don't know to interpret a color as red, you just know it's red.
Yeah.
And you know that feeling is thirst, and you know that's hunger, and that they are distinct. Like, when you feel hungry, you don't think, red. Right? Like, those are different senses.
I'm thinking pretty red right now.
And there is something in your mind which tells you, here is the sense, and here is the solution or thing to the sense, right? Yeah. Which is God's influence, essentially. Or at least your own will, which can be corrupted, of course. But that means that you can also sense truths. So you can say, look, I know I'm hungry. I can't describe the hunger feeling. I just know it means hungry. So I can also describe, I know God's real. Like, I can sense God's real, right? So that's more along the lines of Scottish common sense realism. It's like, you can just know things about reality. And so God exists is just a fact of nature. And so that was what the founders of the United States also said. We hold these truths to be self-evident. You should do good things because you should. It's a human sense. In the same way we can taste sugar, we know what good is.
Yeah.
We can taste good, or whatever, right? So it's the same thing. So, but one of the lawyers arguing against him, a guy named Pisco, I don't know if you've seen him before, but he's a left-wing New York lawyer. He was saying, wait, what is...
Won't be in New York for much longer.
What is objective reality? I don't understand what you mean by objective truth. And he didn't understand objective truth. Because I think he thought objective meant correct, right? Mm-hmm. But that's not what objective truth means. Objective truth means the truth stands alone in the universe as an axiom, regardless of the observer. So, and we don't know what those objective truths are. I think Kant did a pretty good job of that. And we expounded upon Kant, I think, in a useful way, where we said, yes, there are objective truths, but we don't know what they are. Whereas this guy was saying, wait, are you saying that don't lie is an objective truth, so therefore God can't lie? Well, and so God isn't all powerful then. And the guy was like, well, no, lying is something God can't do because he is like, but he says, first of all, I reject the premise that lying is objectively good. But if lying was objectively good, not lying was objectively good. So I reject the premise that not lying is objectively good. But if not lying was objectively good, then God wouldn't be able to do it because that is not part of the nature of God, because God is the perfection. So he doesn't, lying is a defect, right? Like he doesn't have weakness, so he doesn't lie.
Yeah.
And this guy could not grasp that concept. And so I think Descartes' ideas, even though I disagree with them, are fundamental to understanding, just having a conversation with someone like, hey, let's look at that thing. And it's like, well, what if you see a different color than I do? That's part of Descartes. And it's like, okay, a lot of people know that one. But like, does objective truth exist or not? It doesn't matter if it does or not, or if you agree or not. It's just, can we at least, you understand what subjective truth is and objective truth, and then we can decide which one we think's better. But we actually at least have to understand that one of those is an option, right? And so I think the foundations of Descartes, like if people, now the problem is I think people could read Descartes and not understand a word.
Yeah.
And not improve upon themselves at all. But I think the entire debate panel, which went for like 4 hours, could have been a 1 hour interesting conversation if they all understood Descartes to begin with. But although that said, I do think there is a tactic I've seen more and more, and I think it's more done among materialists rather than objectivists or just traditionalists or religious people. But materialists seem to really be doing this argument where they will say, I don't understand something, even though they do understand the concept, but they seem to believe that if you fully understood an idea, you would agree with it because truth is self-evidently good. So it's the same reason they will say, this study says that we should do this, therefore we should do this. But it's like, no, I can agree that the study is done correctly and that it is a totally correct study, and I can still disagree with the conclusion, right?
Yeah.
Or I can even disagree, I can even say the conclusion of the study would be correct, but we still shouldn't implement it because there are other values in the world. Or I can say, no, I fully understand your position, I don't agree with your position. It's like,
yes.
But if we bring in immigrants, then we'll have better economy, and this study proves it, and they don't riot, they're more peaceful than average, this study proves it, and it's like, okay, but I don't want immigrants. It's like, and that's all you have to do. But they're like, no, but if you actually, no, I guess you don't understand me, because if you look at, no, I do understand you, but I don't, it doesn't matter.
Look, the Chad yes or the Chad no.
Yeah, but the point being that materialists seem to think if we all were all equally educated, they think, this is what they think, if everyone was educated, we would all have the same beliefs.
Yes.
And it's like, no, critical thinking would have, if people were actually well educated and had critical thinking, they'd have more variety of beliefs.
They cannot comprehend the Chad yes and the Chad no.
Well, they think it's just like, I said in the comments of another video that was related to that video, right? I said, it seems to me that this one woman doesn't think there should be a left-wing and a right-wing party in the United States. And I got it, like, people replying like, why should there be? And it's like, yeah, and I was like, well, because humility, and because both are needed. One, they have different strengths from each other. Like, for instance, you need to have hierarchy, but hierarchy tends towards corruption. So you need to have a watchdog on both sides, right? And the person said, that's like saying you're stronger if you have one half of your teeth are rotten and one half are not. I was like, holy cow.
Yeah.
Like, you've never heard the expression, you need two wings for an airplane to fly? Like, and so they actually think, and in this case, now I'm sure there's right-wing, but right-wing people tend to be less materialistic. Yeah. But these people actually seem to think that if right-wingers were good and educated people, they would be left-wingers. Like, if you took a right-winger and you made him a good person with magic, and then you gave him an education with school, he would become a left-winger.
No, you don't even need to make him good. You just need to educate him. That's what makes him good, so he understands like you. Because
once you have the understanding, then you will see this is the only way forward. And it's like, no, you can have an understanding and still have a totally different view from the world. And so I think that Descartes is really important for that. Just like, we can say objective or subjective reality exists, and what do we do about that? So yeah, there's more about Descartes, but I can just weave it in future episodes or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, all right.
It's a part of your lexiconic Zeitgeistian.
Yeah. Well, Descartes actually also talks about how you know an idea clearly and you can talk about it for like a very brief period of time, and then afterwards, all you can do is remember that you knew the idea, but you don't actually know the idea. And sometimes your memory of knowing the idea becomes false, even though you knew the idea originally correctly. And so he says, how do you defend against that? And he said the only way to defend against that is when you know the idea is true and clear. Not just your memory that it was true and clear, in his vivid and clear or clear and distinct, but you actually have to know in the moment that it is still clear and distinct.
Well, I have this philosophy. It's kind of like a weird Zen philosophy, which is, I forgot something. Well, if it's important, I'll remember.
Or if it's important, it's part of my being.
Well, but I've advanced it to make it more Christian, which is, well, if it's important, God will remind me.
Yeah. And well, I think God reminding you is also the same thing as it has become part of how you act and
Yeah.
who you are. Like the thing 5 years ago, to bring it back to probably previous episode or 2 episodes ago.
Maybe 3.
Yeah, maybe 3 episodes ago, that we talked about where I said church, why would you like church? I was a different person then, and I can tell just listening to him, like, it's really fascinating having a record of so many thoughts and like over such a long period. Because
maybe the true value of this podcast will not be to anyone but ourselves.
I love listening to it. Like, I'll just put it on because it's really fascinating to listen. And it's also like, you know how I said Descartes said you knew something vivid and clear back then?
Yeah.
I will learn stuff from myself listening to a podcast from like 7 years ago. It's like, did you know that like crabs are unable to do like walk sideways? I'm like, why did I know that? Like, how do I know that? But okay, cool. I learned something from myself. And so it's kind of like my memory and my mind have also expanded in a way because it's just out there and I can like reintegrate it.
Yeah, you can now comprehend and take it back into chaos and integrate it into yourself.
Yeah. And so in the church case, I think I did have a lesser understanding of everything church could be. And also I was being more dismissed. Like, I knew still that church had value, but I was being more dismissive than...
And so did I. Like, I wrote up these 3 little note cards of more of a defense than me. Like, that argument I had there was me knowing that it is good, but not knowing how to say it was good, so I said it in the way that I could.
Although I think you just noticing the distinction right away, instead of arguing church was good or arguing that church was bad, but instead saying there's 2 different churches you're conflating here.
Yeah.
That alone, if that was all you had, someone who was sufficiently good faith enough to meditate on that would get your entire rest of your argument from that.
Yeah.
You condensed like every bit of knowledge you needed into that instant split distinction, which was like brilliant. Like that was actually brilliant. Right,
well, that's where my wisdom comes from.
All right,
is saying things I don't understand.
Yeah, but
no, saying things I understand but don't know how to say.
But I think if you had just said, no, church is actually good, it has, and then you read all these, that would have been a weaker argument than actually saying there's 2 different kinds of churches you're talking about there. Yeah. And even recognizing, it's crazy though, because against someone else, they might have, like a lot of these materialists I was talking about, they wouldn't have cared, right? But with me, I will actually be like, oh yeah, there is 2 kinds of churches that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Maybe not 5 years ago, but I will now. And so the fact that you were willing to give me that benefit of the doubt was also very good of you, because you could have said, well, there's 2 different churches you could be talking about, but everyone, like all these atheists, they don't care, right? They just think there's only one kind of church. But you actually gave me the benefit of the doubt of, no, you're conflating 2 different kinds of church there. So I think that was also really cool.
Well, you can't convince anyone of anything.
No, not in the short term. Long term, I think it just kind of percolates, and then they're speaking your points without realizing it.
Yeah.
I've been
you
corrupted.
have to play the long game.
Because I think even, like, you know, like you said, I interrupted you and just moved on. But I do think that those ideas still stick with you afterwards, right? Like they still bounce around in my mind, like, years later, and I go...
Like worm tongue whispering things
and
in
I'm
your
like,
ear.
Yeah, no, of course, church has 2 different distinctions, even if I didn't talk about it at the time.
That's what I interpret worm tongue was doing to corrupt the Eden.
And I also do... Like, I do think about stuff afterwards where I'm like, oh, I should have talked about that more with Connor. Like, I do think about our conversations, and I also listen back to them. I'm like, oh, yeah, we should talk. So I actually do continue thinking about them. So even if you say something and I don't listen to you in the moment, or you think I don't listen to you, I'm often still, like, it's still bouncing around in there somewhere.